Don't you lie to me, 'cause I'm your lady. I'll be the river running free to all the oceans of your love. If you can handle me, I'll guide you through my fantasy. I'm fragile like a storm, yeah. I'm strong if you keep me warm. That's how I love, that's how I am. I'm a real woman, true as one can be. I'm a real woman, I'll make you see. I'm a real woman, true as one can be. I'm a real woman, I'll make you see. I've been wounded in 100 ways. I'm not sure of all the things I say. It's not easy to encircle me. I'll show my passion with no reserve. If you don't play the one who hurts, 'cause I've been hurt before, I'll take no more. I don't even know what's gonna happen next. Your body and your soul may never take a rest. But if you play it real, I will love you still. I'm a real woman, true as one can be. I'm a real woman, I'll make you see. I'm a real woman, true as one can be. I'm a real woman, I'll make you see. Well, I guess you understand me, baby. I'm a flow of emotions in the river of life. But if you stand by me, you'll see through me.
I started talking without the mic on. All right, family, glad to be back with you. Hope you all have been having a fantastic New Year so far. As you can tell, mine has been busy. Back to work. Took a couple weeks off. And that is done for now. Back to the grind. Outside of that, it's been a little interesting in its own little way. 2025 is allowing me to expand a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, a lot of everything. I'm trying to see, is the music still playing? Okay, no. Facebook is way behind. I mean, way behind. So, see what YouTube doing. Sorry, man. I think TikTok was acting a little crazy, so I couldn't get it cracking. So I hope you not trying to see me on TikTok. I'll figure out what it is later. I ain't even had the energy for that today. So we making it do what it do. We are on our heart chakra. So, oh my God. Okay. Is it working? It is. So it's just not working on my computer. Sorry, guys. Good. Now we can move on. Um. All right. Good God. Listen, I was in Wilmington, North Carolina this week, and I actually did enjoy Wilmington. I had some. The first food I had there was amazing. The second food, they could have did a little better, but it wasn't bad. But the thing that I probably loved the most was the traffic. Man, listen, Charlotte traffic has gotten so bad that it drives me crazy. But Wilmington had old Charlotte traffic. So that was exciting for me, so don't mind it. Um, we're gonna continue reading the Celestine prophecy. We are on our heart chakra, color green, as you can tell by the lighting. And it's crazy. I got the disco lights on today. My I wanted to turn on some other lights, and the disco lights came on, so I just assumed that my spirit wanted some strobe effect going on. I don't know if you can tell. I can't tell. So, and the element for the heart is air. It's crazy because the wind's been blowing like crazy the last couple of days too. You know, I was telling someone that it's blowing in new energy, some messages in there, and you could have put your thoughts. I think we're gonna do 369. That's what came to my mind, and then we're gonna do our visualization. We start with the bowl. if you remember our 369 breathing activity, we breathe in, hold it for 3, and release. Breathe in, hold it for 6, release. Breathe in, hold it for 9, release. So on my count of 3, we're going to start the breath work. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. 2. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Release. All right. Breathe in. Hold it for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Release. Breathe in. Hold it for 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and release. So this time, I want you to think about the other day when it was rather windy. We might get a little bit more. It might be windy for you today. And think about how you felt that air blow across your skin, whether it brought in a little bit of cold or a little more light, push the clouds away. Just imagine it just blowing across you. I know I had a friend in Florida and it was rather warm for them, so that wind blew a little warm breeze across their face, but for the most of us, it blew a little cold. And as you feeling that wind blow across you, I want you to think about what's one thing emotionally that you want to prioritize for yourself this year. And I want you to put that in your mind. What is something that you want to prioritize for yourself this year? And continue to focus on the air blowing across your skin. And as you feel that breeze blow across, I want you to speak into existence what you are going to do differently for yourself, what you need to feel differently. Put those thoughts, those ideas, those prayers into the wind. Focus on your breathing and the words coming out of your mouth. And as you are speaking, I want you to repeat after me. I love myself and others. I deserve to be loved. I forgive others easily. My heart is fully open, loving, and pure. I follow the voice of my heart. I love myself and others. I deserve to be loved. I forgive others easily. My heart is fully open, loving, and pure. I follow the voice of my heart. close out visualization. For me, 2025 is a year of hard work. And I ain't even gonna lie, it started off with a bang. And yeah, I think this year is definitely bringing to the forefront my relationships with women, feminine energy, and probably gentleness. So the main character is at what is it, with the monks, and he escaped all the shootouts, and now he's with the monks, and well, no, not the monks, the priest Sanchez, the head priest, I believe. He went to the city, to the town, for a meeting, and he's hoping to find some information on. I forget the main characters. I always forget his name. I am terrible with names. I don't forget faces. I don't forget places. I don't forget smells. But I promise you, I do not know your name. you, you better all probably, you better all let me smell you than ask me your name. I know what you smell like. Definitely, which is weird. The next morning, I awakened at dawn feeling totally refreshed. Outside, a morning mist rolled through the courtyard. I stoked up a fire and put several pieces of kindling in the coals and fanned it until it caught up. I was about to look through the kitchen for food when I heard Sanchez's truck approaching. I walked outside as he emerged from behind the church, a backpack in one arm and several packages in the other. "I have some news," he said, motioning to me to follow him back inside the house. Several other priests appeared with hot corn cakes and grits and more dried fruit. Sanchez greeted the man, then sat with me at the tables as the priest scurried away. "I attended a meeting of some priests in the Southern Council," he said. "We were there to talk about the manuscript. At issue with the government's aggressive actions, this was the first time any group of priests have met publicly in support of this document. And we were just beginning our discussion when a government representative knocked on the door and asked to be admitted." He paused as he served his plate and took several bites, chewing them thoroughly. "The representative," he continued, "assured us that the government's sole purpose was to protect the manuscript from outside exploitation. He informed us that all copies being held by Peruvian citizens must be licensed. He said he understood our concern, but asked us to comply with the law and turn in our copies. He promised that the government duplicates would be issued back to us at once." "Did you turn them in?" "Of course not." We both ate for a few minutes. I tried to overchew to appreciate the taste. "We asked about the violence in Kula," he went on, "and he told us that this was a necessary reaction against men called Jensen, that several of his men were armed agents from another country. He said they planned to find and steal the undiscovered part of the manuscript and remove it from Peru. So the government had no choice but to arrest them. There was no mention of your friends. Do you believe the government, man? No, we didn't. After he left, we continued our meeting. We agreed that our policy would be one of quiet resistance. We would continue to make copies and distribute them carefully. Will your church leaders allow you to do that? I asked. We don't know, Sanchez said. The church elders have disapproved of the manuscript, but so far have not seriously investigated who is involved with it. Our main concern is that is a cardinal who resides further north, Cardinal Sebastian. He is the most vocal in opposition to the manuscript and is very influential. If he convinces the leadership to issue strong proclamations, then we will have very interesting decision to make. Why is he so opposed to the manuscript? He's afraid. Why? I haven't spoken with him in a long time, and we always avoid the subject of the manuscript. But I believe he thinks man's role is to participate in the cosmos, ignorant of spiritual knowledge by faith alone. He thinks the manuscript will undermine the status quo, the lines of authority in the world. How would it do that? He smiled and tilted his head back slightly. The truth shall set you free. That means you won't have to go follow people anymore. I was looking at him, trying to understand what he meant, eating the last of the bread and fruit on my plate. He ate several more tiny bites and pushed his chair back. You seem much stronger, he said. Did you talk with anyone here? Yes, I replied. I learned of a method of connecting with energy from one of the priests. I didn't catch his name. He was the one sitting in the area while we were talking in the courtyard yesterday. Remember? When I spoke with him later, he showed me how to absorb energy and then project it back. His name is John, Sanchez said, and then nodded for me to go on. It was an amazing experience, I said. By remembering the love I felt, I was able to open up. I sat up there all day simmering in it. I didn't reach the state I had experienced on the ridge, but I got close. Sanchez looked more serious. The role of love has been misunderstood for a long time. Love is not something that we should do to be good or to make the world a better place out of some abstract moral responsibility or because we give up our own hedonism. Connecting with energy feels like an excitement, then euphoria, and then love. Finding enough energy to maintain that state of love certainly helps the world, but it most directly helps us. It is the most hedonistic thing we do. I agreed. Then noticed he had moved his chair back several more feet and was looking at me intensely, his eyes unfocused. So what does my field look like, I asked. It's much larger, he said. I think you feel very good. I do. Good. This is what we do here. Tell me about it, I said. We train priests to go further into the mountains and work with the Indians. It's a lonely job, and the priests must have great strength. All of the men here have been screened thoroughly, and all have one thing in common. Each has had one experience he calls mystical. I have been studying this kind of experience for many years, he continued, even before the manuscript was found. And I believe that when one has already encountered a mystical experience, getting back into that state and raising one's personal energy level comes much easier. Others can do it to connect, but it takes longer. A strong memory of the experience, as I think you learned, facilitates this recreation. After that, one slowly builds back. What does one person's energy field look like when it's happening? It grows outward and it changes color slightly. What color? Normally from a dull white toward green and blue. But the most important thing is that it expands. For instance, during your mystical encounter on the ridgetop, your energy flashed outward into the whole universe. Essentially, you were connected and drew energy from the entire cosmos And in turn, your energy swelled and encompassed everything everywhere. Can you remember how that felt? Yeah, I said. I felt as though the entire universe was my body and I was just a head, or perhaps more accurately, the eyes. Yes, he said. And at that moment, your energy field and that of the universe were the same. The universe was your body. I had a strange memory during that time, I said. I seem to remember how this larger body, this universe of mine, evolved. I was there. I saw the first stars form from simple hydrogen, and then I saw more complex matter evolve in successive generations of the suns. Only I didn't see matter. I saw matter as simple vibrations of energy that were evolving systematically into ever more complex, higher states. Then life began and evolved to a point where humans appeared. I stopped suddenly and he noticed my changed mood. What's wrong? He said. That's where the memory of evolution stopped, I explained. With humans, I felt as if the story continued, but I couldn't quite grasp it. The story does go on, he said. Humans are carrying forth the universe's evolution towards higher and higher vibrational complexity. How? I asked. He smiled, but he didn't answer. Let's talk about this later. I really must check in on a few things. I see you in an hour or so. I nodded. He picked up an apple and walked out. I wandered outside behind him, then remembered the copy of The Fifth Insight in the bedroom and retrieved it. Earlier, I had been thinking of the forest where Sanchez had been sitting when I had first met him. Even in my fatigue and panic, I had noticed that the place was extraordinarily beautiful. So I walked down the road toward the west until I came to the exact spot, then sat down there myself. Leaning back against a tree, I cleared my mind and spent several minutes looking around. The morning was bright and breezy, and I watched the wind as it whipped the branches above my head. The air felt refreshing as I took in several deep breaths. During a lull in the wind, I took out the manuscript and looked for the page where I had stopped reading. Before I could locate it, however, I heard the sound of a truck engine. I lay flat beside a tree and attempted to determine its direction. The sound was coming from the mission. As it grew closer, I could see it was Sanchez's old truck with him driving. I thought you might be, he said as he pulled up to where I was standing. Get in, we need to leave. What's going on? I asked, sliding into the passenger seat. He drove on toward the main road. One of my priests told me of a conversation he overheard in the village. Some government officials are in town, and they are asking questions about me and the mission. What do you think they want? He looked at me reassuringly. I don't know. Let's just say I'm not as certain as before that they will leave us alone. I thought, as a precaution, that we should drive up into the mountains. One of my priests lives in Machu Picchu. His name is Father Carl. We'll be safe at his house until we can better read the situation. He smiled. I want you to meet Machu Picchu anyway. I suddenly had a flash of suspicion that he had made a deal and was taking me somewhere to turn me in. I decided to proceed cautiously and stay alert until I found out for sure. Did you finish the translation? Most of it, I said. You had asked about human evolution. Did you finish that part? No. He turned his eyes from the road and looked at me intensely. I pretended not to notice. Is something wrong? He asked. Nothing, I said. How long would it take me to get to Machu Picchu? About 4 hours. I wanted to remain silent and let Sanchez talk, hoping he might give himself away, but I couldn't control my curiosity about evolution. So, how do we humans how do we humans further evolution? I asked. He glanced at me. What do you think? I don't know, I said. But when I was up on the ridge, I thought it might have something to do with meaningful coincidences that the first insight talks about. That's right, he said. That would fit with the other insights, wouldn't it? I was confused. I almost understood, but I couldn't quite grasp. I remained silent. Think of how the insights fall into sequence, he said. The first insight occurs when we take the coincidences seriously. These coincidences make us feel there is something more, something spiritual operating underneath everything we do. The second insight institute our awareness as something real. We can see that we have been preoccupied with material survival, with focus on controlling our situation in the universe for security. And we know our openness now represents a kind of waking up to what is really going on. The third insight begins a new view of life. It defines the physical universe as one of pure energy, an energy that somehow responds to how we think. And the fourth exposes the human tendency to steal energy from other humans by controlling them, taking over their minds, a crime in which we engage because we often feel depleted of energy and cut off. This shortage of energy can be remedied, of course, when we connect with the higher source. The universe can provide all we need if we can only open up to it. That is the revelation of the fifth insight. In your case, he continued, you had a mystical experience that allowed you to briefly see the magnitude of energy one can acquire. But this state is like leaping ahead of everyone else and glimpsing the future. We can't maintain it for very long. Once we try to talk to someone who's operating in normal consciousness or try to live in a world where conflict is still happening, we get knocked out of this advanced state and fall back into the level of our old selves. And then, he continued, it is a matter of slowly regaining what we glimpsed, a little at a time, and to begin progression back toward that ultimate consciousness. But to do this, we must learn to consciously fill up energy because this energy brings on coincidences, and the coincidences help us actualize the new level of permanent on a permanent basis. I must have looked puzzled because he said, think about it. When something occurs beyond chance to lead us forward in our lives, then we become more actualized people. We feel as though we are attaining what destiny is leading us to become. When this occurs, the level of energy that brought on the coincidences in the first place is instituted in us. We can be knocked out of it and lose the energy when we are afraid, but this level serves as our new outer limit, which can be regained quite easily. We have become a new person. We exist at a level of higher energy, at a level, get this, of higher vibration. Can you see the process now? We fill up, grow, fill up, grow again. That is how we as humans continue the evolution of the universe to a higher and higher vibration. Makes sense. He paused for a moment, then seemed to think about something he wanted to add. His evolution has been going on unconsciously throughout human history. That explains why civilization has progressed and why humans have grown larger, lived longer, and so forth. Now, however, we are making the whole process conscious. This is what the manuscript is telling us. That it is what this movement towards a wide, worldwide spiritual consciousness is all about. I was listening intensely, totally fascinated with what Sanchez was telling me. So all we have to do is fill up with energy, as I learned to do with John, and the coincidences begin to happen more consistently. Well, yes, but that's not as easy as you think. Before we connect with the energy on a permanent basis, there is one more hurdle we must pass. The next insight. The sixth deals with this issue. What is it? He looked at me squarely. We must face up to our particular way of controlling others. Remember, the fourth insight reveals that humans have always fell short of energy and have sought to control. each other to acquire energy that flows between us. The fifth then shows us that an alternative source exists, but we really can't stay connected to this source until we come to grips with the particular method that we as individuals use in our controlling and stop doing it, because whenever we fall back into this habit, we get disconnected from the source. Getting rid of this habit isn't quite easy either, because it isn't always conscious at first. The key to letting it go is to bring it to fully into consciousness. And we do that by seeing that our particular style of controlling others is one we learned in childhood to get attention, to get the energy moving our way, and we're stuck there. This style is something we repeat over and over again. I call it our unconscious control drama. I call it a drama because it's one familiar scene, like a scene in the movie, for which we write the script as youth. Then we repeat this scene over and over in our daily lives without being aware of it. All we know is that this same kind of event happens to us repeatedly. The problem is, if we are repeating one particular scene over and over, then the other scenes of our real life movie, the high adventure marked by coincidence, can't go forward. We stop the movie when we repeat this one drama in order to manipulate energy. Sanchez slowed the truck and moved carefully forward through a series of deep ruts in the road. I realized I was frustrated. I couldn't quite grasp how the control drama worked. I almost respected my feelings to Sanchez, but I couldn't. I realized I still felt distant from him, and I didn't care to reveal myself. Do you understand? He asked. I don't know, I said curtly. I don't know if I have control drama. He's showing it right now. He is showing it right now. There we go. He said, he looked at me with the warmest regard and chuckled out loud. Is that so? He asked. Then why do you always act so aloof? Listen, that is a true control mechanism for a lot of people. That nonchalant, that kind of distance, acting as though they have perfect control over your emotions and so that they don't affect them in any way. That is definitely a control mechanism. A serious one. Lord. Mm. Clearing the path. Ahead, the road narrowed and bent sharply around the sheer rock face of the mountain. The truck bounced over several large rocks and slowly proceeded through a curve. Below, the Andes rose in massive gray ridges above the banks of snow-white clouds. I looked at Sanchez. He was leaning over the steering wheel, tense. For most of the day, we had been scaling steep inclines and edging through passes made more narrow by fallen rock. I had wanted to broach the subject of control drama again, but the time seemed inappropriate. Sanchez appeared to need every ounce of energy for driving, and besides, I wasn't clear on what I wanted to ask. I had read the rest of the fifth insight, and it had echoed exactly the points Sanchez had related to me. The idea of getting rid of my style of controlling seemed desirable, especially if it would make my evolution accelerate. But I couldn't grasp how control drama operated. What are you thinking about? Sanchez asked. I finished reading the fifth insight, I said, and I was thinking about those dramas. Considering what you said about me, I assume you think my drama has something to do with me being aloof? He didn't reply. He was staring up the road. A few hundred feet ahead, a large four-wheel drive vehicle blocked the way. A man and a woman stood on a rock precipice 50 feet from their vehicle. They returned our gaze. Sanchez stopped the truck and looked them over for an instant, then smiled. I know the woman, he said. That's Julia. It's all right. Let's talk to them. Both the man and the woman were dark complexioned and pure Peruvian. The woman was older, appearing to be 50, while the man looked approximately 30. As we got out the truck, the woman walked towards us. Father Sanchez, she said as she approached. How are you, Julia? Sanchez replied. The two embraced. Then Sanchez introduced me to Julia. Julia, in turn, introduced her companion, Rolando. Saying nothing else, Julia and Sanchez turned their backs on us and walked towards the overhang where Julia and Rolando had previously been standing. Rolando looked at me intensely, and I instinctively turned and walked in the direction of the other two people. Rolando followed, still looking at me as though he wanted something. Although his hair and features were young, his complexion was ruddy and red. For some reason, I felt anxious. Several times as we walked to the edge of the mountains, he looked as though he was going to speak, but each time I turned my eyes away and increased my pace. He remained silent. When we reached the precipice, I sat on the ledge to prevent him from sitting next to me. Julia and Sanchez were above me about 20 feet, 25 feet, sitting together on a large boulder. Rolando sat as close to me as possible. Although his constant stare bothered me, I was slightly curious about him at the same time. He caught me looking at him and asked, Are you here for the manuscript? I took a long time to answer. I've heard of it. He looked perplexed. Have you seen it? Some, I said. Do you have something to do with it? I am interested, he said, but I have not seen any copies. A period of silence followed. Are you from the United States? He asked. The question disturbed me, so I decided not to answer. Instead, I asked, Does the manuscript have anything to do with the ruins at Machu Picchu? I don't think so, he replied, except that it was written about the same time that they were built. I remained silent, looking out at the incredible view of the Andes. Sooner or later, if I remained quiet, he would divulge what him and Julia were doing here and how it concerned the manuscript. We sat for 20 minutes with no conversation. Finally, Rolando stood up and walked where the others were talking. I was perplexed at what to do. I had avoided sitting with Sanchez and Julia because I had the distinct impression they wanted to talk alone. For perhaps another 30 minutes, I remained there, gazing out at the rocky peaks and straining to overhear the conversation above me. None of them paid me the slightest bit of attention. Finally, I decided to join them. But before I could move, the three of them stood and began walking towards Julia's vehicle. I cut across the rocks toward them. They have to go, Sanchez remarked as I approached. I'm sorry we didn't have time to talk, Julia said. I hope to see you again. She was looking at me with the same warmth Sanchez often displayed. As I nodded, she cocked her head slightly and added, In fact, I have a feeling I will see you soon. As we strode down the rocky path, I felt the need to say something in response, but I couldn't think. When we reached their vehicle, Julia only nodded slightly and said a quick goodbye. Both she and Rolando got in, and Julia drove away toward the north, the way Sanchez and I had come. I felt puzzled by the entire experience. Once we were in our vehicle, Sanchez asked, Did Rolando fill you in on Will? No, I asked. Had they seen him? Sanchez looked confused. Yes, they saw him at a village 40 miles east of here. Did Will say anything about me? Julia said Will mentioned being separated from you. She said Will talked mainly with Rolando. Didn't you tell Rolando who you were? No, I didn't know if I could trust him. Sanchez looked at me in total bewilderment. I told you it was fine to talk with them. I have known Julia for years. She owns a business in Lima, but since the discovery of the manuscript, she had been looking for the ninth insight. Julia would not be tried with anyone untrustworthy. There was no danger. Now you missed what could have been important information. Sanchez looked at me with a serious expression. This is a perfect example of how control dramas interfere, he said. You were so aloof, you didn't allow an important coincidence to take place. I must have appeared defensive. It's all right, he said. Everyone plays a drama of one kind or another. At least now you understand how yours work. I don't understand, I said. What am I exactly doing? Your way of controlling people and situations, he explained. In order to get the energy coming your way, it's create this drama during which you withdraw and look mysterious and secretive. You tell yourself that you're being cautious, but what you're really doing is hoping someone will pull into the drama and will try to figure out what's going on with you. When someone does, you remain vague, forcing them to struggle and dig and try to discern your true feelings. As they do, they give you their full attention and that sends their energy towards you. The longer you can keep them interested and mystified, the more energy you receive. Unfortunately, when you play aloof, your life tends to evolve very slowly because you're repeating the same scene over and over again. If you had opened up the Rolando, your life movie would have taken off to a new and meaningful direction. I felt myself becoming depressed. All this was just an example of what Will had pointed out when he saw me resisting giving information to Renault. It was true. I did tend to hide what I really thought. I looked out the window as we followed the roads higher into peaks. Sanchez concentrated again on avoiding the fatal drop-offs. When the road straightened, he looked over at me and said, "This first step in the process of getting clear for each of us is to bring our particular control drama into full consciousness. Nothing can proceed until we look at ourselves and discover what we are doing to manipulate energy. This is what just happened to you." "What's the next step?" I asked. "Each of us must go back into our past, back into our early family life, and see how this habit was formed. Seeing its inception keeps our way of controlling it in consciousness. Remember, most of our family members were operating in their drama themselves, trying to pull energy out of us as children. This is why we had to form control dramas in the first place. We had to have a strategy to win energy back. It is always in relation to our family members that we develop our particular dramas. However, once we recognize the energy dynamic in our families, we can go past the control strategies and see what is really happening. Listen, my family is in shreds now because of this right here. I recognize the control dramas and I refuse to participate. And they have gotten worse. Oh my God. That's powerful. What do you mean really happening? Each person must reinterpret his family experience from an evolutionary point of view, from a spiritual point of view, and discover who he really is. Once we do that, our control drama falls away and our real lives take off. So how do I begin? By first understanding how your drama was formed. Tell me about your father. He is a good man who was fun-loving and capable, but I hesitated, not wanting to sound ungrateful towards my father. "But what?" Sanchez asked. "Well, he was always critical. I could never do anything right." "How did he criticize you?" Sanchez said. A picture of my father, young and strong, appeared in my mind. He asked questions, then found something wrong with the answers. Boy, Jesus Christ. Lord have mercy. I know that one firsthand. And what happened to your energy? I guess I felt drained, so I tried to keep from telling him anything. You mean you got vague and distant, trying to say things in a way that would get his attention, but not reveal enough to give him something to criticize. I know that's right. He was the interrogator, and you dodged around him with your aloofness. Yeah, I guess, but what is an interrogator? An interrogator is another kind of drama. People who use this means of gaining energy set up a drama of asking questions and probing into another person's world with the specific purpose of finding something wrong. Once they do, they then criticize this aspect of the other person's life. If this strategy succeeds, then the person being criticized is pulled into the drama. They suddenly find themselves becoming self conscious around the interrogator and paying attention to what the interrogator is doing and thinking about so as not to do something wrong that the interrogator wouldn't notice. This psychic deference gives the interrogator the energy he desires. Think about the times you have been around someone like this. When you caught up in this drama, don't you tend to act a certain way so the other person won't criticize you? Criticize. He pulls you off your own path and drains your energy because you judge yourself by what he might be thinking. I remember the feeling exactly, and the person that came to mind was Jensen. So my father was an interrogator, I asked. That's what it sounds like. For a moment, I was lost in thought about my mother's drama. If my father was an interrogator, what was my mother? I appreciate you, family. I didn't even see you on there. Thank you. Um, yeah, yeah. And I mentioned to you, it's been going a little lit. I gave you a brief. Now my family's going right now, but let me explain the classification spoken of in the manuscript. Sanchez says everyone manipulates for energy, either aggressively, directly forcing people to pay attention to them, or passively playing on people's sympathy and curiosity to gain attention. For instance, if someone threatens you, either verbally or physically, then you are forced for fear of something bad happening to you to pay attention to him and so to give him energy. The person threatening you would be pulling you into the most aggressive kind of drama, what the sixth insight calls the intimidator. If, on the other hand, someone tells you all the horrible things that are already happening to them, implying perhaps that you are responsible and that if you refuse to help, these horrible things are going to continue, then this person is seeking to control at the most passive level with what the manuscript calls a poor me drama. I got a friend like that. Oh my God, my homeboy. We say this all the time. I'm like, listen, he won't get his life together because of this. That he controls people by playing on their sympathy. Haven't you ever been around someone who makes you feel guilty when you're in their presence, even though you know there is no reason to feel this way? Yes. Well, it's because you have entered into the drama of world of a poor me. Everything they say and do puts you in a place where you have to defend yourself against the idea that you're not doing enough for this person. That's why you feel guilty just being around them. I nodded. Anyone's drama can be examined, he continued, according to where it falls on the spectrum from aggressive to passive. If a person is subtle in their aggression, finding fault and slowly undermining your world in order to get your energy, then as we saw in your father, this person would be an interrogator. Less passive than a poor me would be your aloofness drama. So in order of drama goes this way: intimidator, interrogator, aloof, and poor me. Does that make sense? I guess. You think everyone falls somewhere in these styles? That's correct. Some people use more than one in different circumstances, but most of us are have one dominant control drama that we tend to repeat, depending on which one worked well on with the members in our family. It suddenly dawned on me. My mother did exactly the same thing to me as my father. I looked at Sanchez. My mother, I know what she was. She was also an interrogator. So you had a double dose. No wonder why you so aloof. But at least you weren't. At least they weren't intimidating you. At least you never feared for your safety. Shoot. Listen, intimidators are the ones who whoop their children. Yes, that is your control mechanism. You're going to beat them, intimidate them into listening. So that's facts. Oh my God. I refuse to be that one. What would you have happened in this case? You would have become stuck in a poor me drama. Do you see how this works? If you are the child and someone is draining your energy by threatening you with bodily harm, then being aloof doesn't work. You can't get them to give you energy by playing coy. They don't give a damn what's going on inside of you. Do you hear me? They don't give a damn what is going on inside of you. They're coming on too strong. So you're forced to become more passive and try the poor me approach, appealing to the mercy of the person, guilt tripping them about the harm they're doing to you. That don't work. Some people so strong. Listen, that guilt trip will not work. I got a homeboy. He used to use that. That was his perfect one. But he loved to say, pack your bags. I'm about to take you on that guilt trip. So at least he'd tell you before he used it. But he was very conscious that guilt trip was one of his. I know that's right. If this doesn't work, then as a child, you endure until you are big enough to explode against the violence and fight aggression with aggression. You hear me? Listen. I'm sorry I'm laughing. I'm having a low moment, man. Yeah, when I was little, you can beat me. Big now. I know that's right. He paused. Like the child you told me about, the one in the Peruvian family that served you dinner. A person goes to whatever extreme necessary to get attention in their family. And after that, this strategy becomes their dominant way of controlling to get energy away from everyone. The drama they constantly repeat. I understand the intimidator, I said, but how does the interrogator develop? What would you do if you were a child and your family members were either not there or ignored you because they were preoccupied with their careers or something? Listen. I don't know. Playing aloof would not get their attention. They wouldn't notice. Wouldn't you have to resort to probing and prying and finally finding something wrong in these aloof people in order to force attention and energy? This is what an interrogator does. I began to get the insight. Aloof people create interrogators. That's right. And interrogators make people aloof. And intimidators create poor me approach. Or if this fails, another intimidator. I know that's right. I'm definitely an intimidator. Exactly. That's how control dramas perpetuate themselves. But remember, there's a tendency to see these dramas in others, but to think that we ourselves are free from such devices. I know I'm not. I'm such a bully. Each of us must transcend this illusion before we can go on. Almost all of us tend to be stuck at least somewhere. Excuse me. All of us tend to be stuck at least some of the time in a drama, and we have to step back and look at ourselves long enough to discover what it is. I was silent for a moment. Finally, I looked at Sanchez again and asked, "So, we see our drama. What happens next?" Sanchez slowed the truck in order to look at me in the eyes. "We are truly free to become more than the unconscious act that we play. As I said before, we could find a higher meaning for our lives, a spiritual reason why we were born to our particular families. We can then get clear about who we really are." What time is it? Kill that ass. All right, I'll read a little more. "We're almost there," Sanchez said. The road was cresting between two peaks, and as we passed a huge formation on our right, I saw a small house ahead. It backed up to another majestic pinnacle of rock. "His truck isn't here," Sanchez says. We parked and we walked to the house. Sanchez opened the door and walked inside while I waited. I took in several breaths. The air was cool and very thin. Overhead, the sky was dark gray with thick clouds. It looked as though it might rain. Sanchez walked back out the door. "No one's inside. He must be at the ruins." "How did we get there?" He suddenly looked exhausted. "They're about a mile up ahead," and handed me the keys to the truck. "Follow the road past the next ridge and you'll see them down below. Take the truck. I want to stay here and meditate." "Okay, I will," I said, walking around to get in the vehicle. I drove forward into a little valley and then up a next ridge, anticipating the view. The sight did not disappoint me. As I crested the ridge, I saw the full splendor of the ruin of Machu Picchu, a temple of complex, massive, carefully shaped rocks weighing tons sitting atop each other on the mountain. Even in the dull, cloudy light, the beauty of this place was overwhelming. I stopped the truck and soaked up the energy for 10 or 15 minutes. Several groups of people were walking through the ruins. I saw a man wearing a priest's collar leave the remains of a building and walk towards a vehicle parked nearby. Because of the distance and because the man wore a leather jacket and a priest's robes, I couldn't be sure it was Father Carl. I started the truck and drove closer. As soon as I heard the sound, he looked up and smiled, apparently recognizing the vehicle as belonging to Sanchez. When he saw me inside, he looked interested and walked over. His beard was short and squat, with dull brown hair and pudgy features. With deep blue eyes, he looked to be about 30. "I'm with Father Sanchez," I said, stepping from the vehicle and introduced myself. "He's up at your house." He offered his hand. "I'm Father Carl." I glanced past him to the ruins. The cut stone was even more impressive when in close proximity. "Is this the first time you've been here?" he asked. "Yes, it is," I replied. "I've heard about this place for years, but never anticipated this." "It's one of the highest energy centers in the world," he said. I looked closely at him. Clearly, he spoke about energy in the same sense it was used in the manuscript. I nodded affirmatively, then said, "I'm at a point where I'm constantly trying to build the energy and deal with my control drama." I felt somewhat pretentious at saying that, but comfortable enough to be honest. "You don't seem too aloof," he said. I was startled. "How did you know that was my drama?" I asked. "I developed an instinct for it. That's why I'm here." "You help people see their way of controlling?" "Yes, and their true self." His eyes shone with sincerity. He was totally direct, with no hint of embarrassment at revealing himself to a stranger. I remained silent, so he said, You understand the first 5 insights? I've read most of them, I said, and I've talked with several people. As soon as I made that statement, I realized I was being too vague. I think I understand the first 5, I added. It's number 6 that I'm not clear about. He nodded, then said, most of the people I talk with haven't even heard of the manuscript. They come up here and they are entranced by the energy. That alone makes them rethink their lives. How do you meet these people? He looked at me with a knowing expression. They seem to find me. I know that's right. He said you help them find their true self? How? He took in a long breath and said, there's only one way. Each of us has to go back to our family experience, that childhood time and place, and review what happened. Once we become conscious of our control dramas, then we can focus on the higher truth of our family, the silver lining, so to speak, that lies beyond the energy conflict. Once we find this truth, we can energize our lives. For this truth tells us who we are, the path we are on, and what we're doing. That's what Sanchez told me. I said, I want to know more about how to find this truth. He zipped up his coat against the late afternoon chill. I hope we can talk about it later, he said. Right now, I would like to greet Father Sanchez. I looked out at the ruins and he added, feel free to look around as long as you would like. I'll see you back at the house later. For the next hour and a half, I walked through the ancient site. At certain spots, I would linger, feeling more buoyant than others. I wondered with fascination about the civilization that had been built these temples. How did they move these stones up there and place them atop one another in this fashion? It seemed impossible. As my intense interest in the ruins began to wane, my thoughts turned towards my personal situation. Although my circumstances had not changed, I felt less fearful now. Sanchez's confidence had reassured me. I had been stupid to doubt him and already liked Father Carl. As darkness descended, I walked back to the truck and returned to Father Carl's house. As I drove up, I could see 2 men standing close to each other inside. When I entered, I heard laughter. Both were busy in the kitchen preparing dinner. Father Carl greeted me and escorted me to a chair. I sat down lazily in front of a large fire in the fireplace and looked around. The room was large and paneled with wide boards which were lightly stained. I could see 2 other rooms, bedrooms apparently, linked by a narrow hallway. The house was lit. Oh my God. I told you, it's some grammar errors in this book and I'm trying to figure it out because it is not a parenthesis, it's a parentheses IT. And now I'm assuming that's supposed to be lit with low wattage bulbs, and I thought I could detect the faint hum of a generator. When the preparations were completed, I was summoned to a rough plank table. Sanchez offered a brief prayer, and then we ate, the 2 men continuing to talk. Afterward, we sat by the fire. Father Carl has spoken with Will, Sanchez said. When? I asked, immediately excited. Will came through here several days ago, Father Carl said. I met him a year ago and he came by to bring some information. He said he thought he knew who was behind the government action against the manuscript. Who? I asked. Cardinal Sebastian, Sanchez interjected. What is he doing? I asked. Apparently, Sanchez said, he is using his influence with the government to increase the military pressure against the manuscript. He has always preferred to work quietly through the government rather than force a division within the church. Now he is intensifying his efforts. Unfortunately, it may be working. What do you mean? I asked. Except for the few priests in the Northern Council and a few others like Julia and Will, no one else seems to have copies any longer. What about the scientists at Vicente? I asked. Both men were silent for a moment. Then Father Carl said, Will told me the government has closed it down. All the scientists were arrested and their research data was confiscated. Will the scientific community stand for it? I asked. What choice do they have? Sanchez said. Besides that, research wasn't accepted by most scientists anyway. The government is apparently selling the idea that these people were breaking the law. I can't believe the government would get away with doing that. Apparently they have, Father Carl said. I made some calls to check and I received the same story. Though they're keeping it very quiet, the government is intensifying its crackdown. What do you think will happen? I asked them both. Father Carl shrugged his shoulders, and Father Sanchez said, I don't know. It may depend on what Will finds. Why? I asked. He appears to be close to finding the missing part of the manuscript, the ninth insight. Perhaps when he does, there will be enough interest to create a worldwide intervention here. Where did he say he was going? I asked Father Carl. He didn't know exactly, but he said his intuition was leading him further north, near Guatemala. His intuitions were leading him? Yes. You'll understand that after you get clear about who you are and go on to the seventh insight. I looked at them both, at how incredibly serene they appeared. How can you remain so calm? I asked. Well, if they come crashing in here and arrest all of us? They gazed at me patiently. Then Father Sanchez spoke. Don't confuse calmness with carelessness. Our peaceful countenance is a measure of how well we are connected with the energy. We stay connected because it is the best thing for us to do, regardless of the circumstances. You understand that, don't you? Yes, I said, of course. I guess I'm having trouble staying connected myself. Both men smiled. Staying connected, Father Carl said, will be easier once you get clear on who you are. Father Sanchez stood up and walked away, announcing that he would be doing the dishes. I looked at Father Carl. Okay, I said, how do I start getting clear about myself? Father Sanchez tells me, he replied, that you already understand the control dramas of your parents. That's right. They were both interrogators and that made me aloof. Okay, now you must look past the energy competition that existed in your family and search for the real reason you were there. I looked at him blankly. The process of finding your true spiritual identity involves looking at your whole family as one long story, trying to find higher meaning. Begin to ask yourself the question, why was I born into this particular family? What might have been the purpose for that? I don't know, I said. Your father was an interrogator. What else was he? You mean what did he stand for? Yes. I thought for a moment, then said, my father genuinely believes in joy in life, in living with integrity, but making the most out of what life has to offer. You know, living life to the fullest. Has he been able to do this? To some extent, but somehow he always seemed to have a run of bad luck when he thinks he's about to enjoy his life the most. Father Carl squinted his eyes in contemplation. He believes life is for fun and enjoyment, but he hasn't quite pulled it off. Yes. Have you thought about why? Not really. I always figured he was unlucky. Maybe he hasn't found out the way to do it yet. Maybe not. What about your mother? She's no longer living. Can you see what her life represented? Yes, her life was a church. She stood for Christian principles. In what way? She believed in the community service and following God's laws. Did she follow God's laws to the letter, or at least as far as her church taught? Was she able to convince your father to do the same thing? I laughed. Not really. My mother wanted him to go to church every week and to be involved in the community programs. But as I told you, he was more of a free spirit than that. So where did that leave you? I looked at him. I never thought about it. Didn't they both want your allegiance? Wasn't that why they were trying to interrogate you, to make sure you weren't siding with the other's values? Didn't they both want you to think their way was the best? Yes, you're right. How did you respond? I tried to avoid taking a stand, I guess. They both monitor you to see if you were measuring up to their particular views, and unable to please both, you became aloof. That's about it, I said. What happened to your mother? He asked. She developed Parkinson's disease and died after being sick for a long time. Did she remain true to her faith? Absolutely, I said, through it all. So what meaning did she leave you with? What? You're looking for meaning. You're looking for the meaning her life has for you. The reason you were born to her. What you were there to learn. Every human being, whether they are conscious of it or not, illustrates with their lives how he or she thinks a human's supposed to be living. You must try to discover what she taught you, and at the same time, what about her life could have been done better? What could you have changed about your mother is part of what you're working on yourself. Why only part? Because how would you improve on your father's life is the other part. I listen to me. That's we say the next generation is supposed to do better than the last. So I understand, or we should understand how our parents struggle with some things. Because we got the gift, they don't. He placed his hand on my shoulder. We are not merely the physical creation of our parents. We are also the spiritual creation. You were born to these two people, and their lives had irrevocable effect on who you are. To discover your real self, you must adult what? You must adult that the real you began in a position between their truths. That's why you were born there. Take a higher perspective on what they stood for. Your path is about discovering a truth that is a higher synthesis of what these two people believe. I nodded. So how would you express what your parents taught you? I'm not sure, I replied. What do you think? My father thought life was about maximizing his aliveness, his enjoyment of who he was, and he tried to pursue that end. My mother believed more in sacrifice and spending her time in service to others, denying herself. She felt this was what the scriptures commanded. And you, how do you feel about this? I don't know, really. Which viewpoint would you choose for yourself? That of your mother or that of your father? Neither. I mean, life is not that simple. He laughed. You're being vague. I guess I don't know. But if you had to choose one or the other, I hesitated, trying to think honestly. Then the answer came to me. They're both correct, I said, and incorrect. His eyes beamed. How? I'm not sure exactly, but I think a correct life must include both views. The question for you, Father Carl said, is how? How does one live a life that is both? From your mother, you receive the knowledge that life is about spirituality. From your father, you learn life is about self enhancement, fun, and adventure. So my life, I interrupted, is about somehow combining the two approaches? Yes. For you, spirituality is the question. Your whole life will be about finding one that is self enhancing. This is the problems your parents were unable to reconcile, the one they left for you. This is your evolutionary question, your quest this lifetime. And we'll wrap up there. That was a pretty good one. Yes, sir. And it's funny. My mama all about sacrifice. My daddy was all about live your best life. For real, for real. So I guess it's my turn to figure out this balance. You know what I mean? With family, I appreciate you as always. Oh shoot, excuse me. Doo, doo, doo. I am in town next week, so we will be having a Tuesday show. Man, I got a lot. I just got some stuff to talk about, and it's ironic that that this is what we were talking about on book club tonight, because it's definitely pertinent in my life. So, but if hope you have a great weekend. Hope to see you Tuesday. If I can't see you Tuesday, I hope to catch you next Thursday for another session of book club. Tuesday we will definitely start talking about the spaces that the energies that we want to become and the energies that we want to place ourselves in, the spaces that we want to become, and the spaces that we want to put ourselves in. And I guess one day we're gonna talk about this control mechanisms. That's my favorite part too. But love your family. Man, listen. I'm supposed to be able to use this remote, and this thing is crazy. But I'm old. Oh, hey, it's working. Boop, 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 boop. Peace.